The pyramids, all over the world, are there to remind us there's no escape from gravity or where we've come from and where we are going in an infinite circle of life from birth through death and rebirth again.
Most would agree that mankind's good and darn well tired of being lied to. Tired of being told through religions, bohemian clubs, or worldwide political affiliations that our history is one way when all of the facts and logic point otherwise? Mankind's tired of the programmed news media spreading lies. Tired of their efforts to lull us asleep while the powerful, rich, and famous build underground bunkers. We're tired of all of their lies. Viewer discretion is advised.
Most would agree that if we faced a global calamity, we should have the right to take it head on, as human beings. Most would agree we should focus our science and efforts on determining what's in store for us as creatures of planet Earth. The Egyptians believed we had a right to know.
Some believe that it is important for the facts to be examined, pried at, torn at, and tested repeatedly until the truth and all of it is known. Even if it's a horrible truth and even if it portends of terrible events to follow. Using intuition, insight, seeking more information, gathering input from the hive mind, and being willing to examine unconventional views that aren't in line with our previous social programming. Some believe it's better to become wise and hurt than to suffer from the combined effects of ignorance of the many lies. Much like the Egyptians may have believed and much as they may have lived by, that is, doing their best to go down swinging while paying it forward if they could. We can all learn this from the Egyptians.
They believed the truth needed a voice, even if horrible or difficult to think about.
How do we know this? From their hands, 2 hours paid forward with chisels into stone. They chose to write in solid stone as they hoped their messages would make it through the calamity and in effect pass forward through time to try and help us.
Some have now come to believe that Kiely, Trinity, and Dante, all reaching out in harmony, was their effort to shine as much light as they then could on Tricky, California's long ago past involving cannibalism and potentially current day such activities, with sex trafficking possibly being the least of these poor 16-year-old teens' concerns. Were Kiely, Trinity, and Dante warning us of ongoing satanic ritual abuse and accompanying cannibalism instead? Did their recent forefathers consume the lifeblood and flesh of their most beautiful of all creations, their children? Did Kiely Rodney die trying to warn us of that?
Did Trinity possibly pass away as a double tap and Dante a third such loud report, all in the fall of 2022 and sending emphasis that something must be seriously wrong in those kids' families, churches, and neighborhoods?
Like shots heard around the world, like etched tablets of stone. Some have come to believe such things even if they at first seem impossible. We must continue on this quest to find the whole truth and learn what was so important to them, while also learning, if we can, why our Egyptian forefathers built 500-foot tall pyramids and covered them in limestone.
Unlike the Egyptians 6,000 or 12,000 years ago, however, we are no longer cannibals. We've evolved and we don't sip from the blood of the Magdalene, or do we consume or burn the flesh of our children. We're not following that lost trail anymore. Lost trails like the paths that Kiely Rodney and her friends were on. Lost trails followed by the Donner Party in Tricky, California, whose storied past is now horrific legend and tough to think about lore best shared around campfires amongst friends. Through this, we now all know that the Donners, the Reeds, and the other members of the Donner Party ate their kids in an alleged attempt to survive. Much like the cannibalistic acts of our ancients, perhaps. Much like the Egyptians. Much like the corrupt teachings of the Druids, heretics, and other heathens from our past. Most would agree that mankind's good and darn well tired of being lied to, and mankind's tired of efforts to prevent us from coming to peace with our roles in this universe and coming to peace with the truth.
The pyramids are not art, and they aren't there for religious reasons. They aren't tombs either, although they now are. The pyramids aren't energy generators. Some now believe, instead, that they are Earth ships, like stationary Noah's Arks all across this world left behind by civilizations following lost trails. These pyramids number in the thousands, and some believe depict where and how these former civilizations made their last stands. We're tired of being told through religions, clubs, or mass political affiliations that our history is one way, or that mankind is only 6,000 years old, when all of the facts and logic point otherwise.
We've forgotten why the pyramids were built, perhaps? Some believe the pyramids are there to remind us there's no escape from gravity, nor where we've come from, and nor where we are going, in an infinite circle of life constantly destroying and rebuilding itself again. Some believe the pyramids are hardened bunkers and armored snorkels designed to breath fresh air into the catacombs below, even if sea levels rose by 300 or 400 feet. They likely also were desalination plants to attempt to provide fresh water to their citizens below. They were literally coke cages. Before they were essentially wiped out, likely 12,000 years ago, the Egyptians may have believed they could survive underground if they had pyramids that were at least 300 feet high. Before they were wiped out, they likely learned the hard way that these pyramids need to be at least 500 feet high, at least as high as the tallest pyramid at Giza's high water line. The limestone coatings of all of their other pyramids dissolved due to being in salt water following their worldwide tsunamis. The Egyptians coated them in limestone to learn on our behalf exactly how high they'd at least need to be,
and likely paid the price for us to understand this. At least 500 feet high, these hardened structures need to be, as even the tallest pyramid at Giza lost 31 feet from its top during their generation's tidal waves. As most of the Egyptians perished, perhaps we must aim higher than 500 feet. Viewer discretion is advised.
The Egyptians perhaps believed that for cannibalism they could survive underground by having and consuming lots of children, consuming most of the males, and saving females for further reproductions. Queen Nefertiti is depicted as having had 6 children, all female. These thoughts of cannibalism are depicted in stone for all to see. These images depict a child questioning her mother why daddy was eating her brother, while her sister sat on Queen Nefertiti's shoulder and stared on in similar disbelief.
The Egyptians may have believed that by depicting Nefertiti and her family resorting to cannibalism would enable their survival as a species, and that drawing on the lifeblood of and physical bodies of their offspring was somehow okay.
It is these lost trails that the world's satanic elites follow, perhaps? It is these lost trails we see daily in the media. It is these lost trails they are preparing us for, much like the chiseled stone tablets of our forefathers. It is these lost trails the Egyptians may have utilized to promote their overall survival. It's those lost trails we don't follow anymore. We are more than cannibals, and we don't devour our kids, nor sip from their lifeblood as if they were the very fountain of youth itself. We are more than that as human beings. We can survive in other ways by growing crops underground, 3D printing meat, and we can mechanize ahead of time to provide underground sustenance to our offspring without such horrors from our past. Paying it forward to the next generation without the bloody human sacrifices, much as the Egyptians tried to warn us of.
They, like the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans, the Vikings, the Mongols, etc., likely tried to warn us we are approaching hard times again. our forefathers and theirs, each of us on every location and every country on this world. We're approaching hard times, and abusing kids is still not okay, even 6,000 years later. We don't do that to our kids anymore. It's time we nip it in the bud. Screen kids for abuse much like we screen for scoliosis. Give kids easy ways to send an SOS message that they know in their hearts will be heard and believed and acted on. Like a new police code #17 indicating an abuse victim was seeking help in an urgent way. Like tips left on an FBI page to further their investigation.
It's time we band together as a human race and root out evils, look for all of the marks of the beast. Look for the forlorn kids that are off-grid living lives while possibly involving torture and as victims of the sex trades. We should use the wisdom of the ancients to change what we do right now, so that when and if we do end up inside of the upside down, we will have a way of keeping the innocent children that way. Keeping the children from mankind's weaknesses by building survivor networks only from the pure of morality and heart. Paying it forward in advance to weed out such horrors if possible. We should remember Kiely Rodney and her beautiful and handsome friends, and the dozens of teens who went missing from the devil's towns before them. We should remember them as heroes who tried to pay it forward. We should look upon the Egyptians' warnings to us as indicators that we must find a better way. We're on a logarithmically quickening approach to Sirius A. We're better than that, and we won't treat our kids that way.
And please, no more strange teenage deaths in and around the devil's towns near Turkey, California. No more parents acting like a bunch of mosquitoes sipping minors' lifeblood. Just real talking this time.
The idea that the Earth orbits the Sun, and that the Sun orbits a shared barycenter with Sirius, and that Sirius orbits a barycenter with Alcyone, and that Alcyone orbits the Galactic Nucleus, is not revolutionary, it's just a rediscovery of lost knowledge. Wisdom from the ancients to heed in our times of need? We should let all wars end. We are mankind, and it's our destiny to rise up again. Some may believe that the precession of the equinoxes is caused by the slow and steady wobble of the Earth's poles caused by gravitational forces from the Moon, Sun, and partially Jupiter. The odds of this occurring naturally because of solar system miracle alignments are astronomical, to say the least. The alternative is that we are in a binary orbit with Sirius, which takes 24,000 years to complete, and every 12,000 years this planet suffers an extinction-level event and worldwide catastrophe. The periodicity of the helical rising of Sirius was such that the Egyptians based their calendar on it. Every year for millennia, the appearance of Sirius coincided with the flooding of the Nile, an event that remarkably still happens to this day, even 12,000 years later. From Africa, where the Dogons live, the star Sirius disappears below the horizon and is out of sight for a couple of months. Then it appears again on the morning of July 23, when it rises about 1 minute before the Sun. It appears bright ruby red, just above the horizon, almost exactly due east. 60 seconds later, the Sun emerges. So you can see Sirius for just a moment, then it's gone. This is called the helical rising of Sirius, which was a very important moment for most of the ancient world, not just for the Dogons in Egypt. This is the moment when Sirius and the Sun and the Earth are in a straight line across space. This is the moment when Sirius A and B's combined gravitational pull on our Sun will have the greatest effect during the near part of our elliptical orbit with their barycenter.
The helical rising of Sirius occurs in the summer, showing how the Sun and Sirius become aligned along the horizon of the Earth as it rotates into the light of the Sun. Similarly, the Sun and Sirius are aligned in the winter as well. However, because Sirius is on the outside, it appears directly above the Sun as it rises in the winter. This is the source of the Star of Bethlehem. It is the star Sirius.
The sun's revolution around Sirius' common barycenter is so eccentric and long that perturbations in the position of Sirius are not easily perceived until the sun reaches apastron. Apastron is the point in a star's orbit where it is furthest from its orbital companion. This is intrinsic to the nature of elliptical orbits. As the Sun and Sirius systems progress, the zodiacal constellations shift location and appear to have a retro-progressive movement across the sky over epochs of time. This is likely because our Sun and Sirius are gravitationally sister stars. That Sirius was our Sun's twin and they remain gravitationally attached to this day. Some believe our Sun is in an orbit with the barycenter between them and they circle together on a once every 24,000 years cycle around this universe of ours, just as the ancients tried to warn us of. It's this elliptical orbit with our binary sister star's barycenter that affects all life on Earth. It's this elliptical orbit that the Egyptians tried to warn us of. As we get closer to that barycenter, our speeds will increase, our planet's crust will heat up through the properties of electromagnetism's effect on every structure in our universe.
We call it gravity. Simply, the closer our Sun is to Sirius A, the more we drift magnetically in synchronization to that gravitational alignment, just as it was when our star Helios was born. We are nearing the extremely fast part of our orbit and we're increasing in speed at a logarithmic rate. These electromagnetic excursion events are what the Egyptians tried to warn us of, as explained by the ancients in their efforts to warn us that we face dark times ahead.
Sirius B is a white dwarf which has a true orbit around Sirius A, and it is one of the largest white dwarfs ever found. It is as heavy as our Sun is and almost exactly the same size as Earth. White dwarfs emit pulses and micronovas under certain conditions, becoming clearer to astronomy, and we orbit with one of the biggest white dwarfs discovered. A shaft leading from the Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid of Egypt was and still is aligned precisely with Sirius A. Given the high probability that it was constructed that way, and considering that the pyramids form a star map in and of themselves, it shows how many epochs Sirius has been in a stationary position relative to the movement of the other stars. Celestial bodies in our solar system show harmonic resonance with the Sirius system. Pluto and Sedna are at an incline to the plane of the solar system of roughly 17 degrees, the same as Sirius. Both have orbital periods of 250 years and 12,000 years, which are at 1, 5 and 1, 2 resonances with Sirius, respectively. 12,000 years is roughly 1/2 of the orbit of the Sun around Sirius, hence a 1-2 resonance. The combined gravitational attraction of a neutron star, a white giant star, and large white dwarf would certainly provide the gravitational force needed to keep our Sun bound at a distance of 8.6 light years. In astronomy, axial precession is a gravity-induced, slow and continuous change in the orientation of an astronomical body's rotational axis. In particular, it refers to the gradual shift in the orientation of Earth's axis of rotation, which, like a wobbling top, traces out a pair of cones joined at their apices in a cycle of approximately 24,000 to 26,000 years, called a great or platonic year in both astronomy and astrology. Earth's wobble is caused in part by Earth not being a perfect sphere and caused in part by the large South Pole gravitational anomaly. It's caused to shift by this 24,000-year solar precession cycle the Egyptians depicted in stone, with repeated instances of mankind passing through stone, then passing through waves, and then through stone, on an endlessly repeating basis. They could not have made it any clearer. The snake they spoke of, if some believe these arcs on repeat aren't tsunami waves, with its undulations of 24,000 years, was another way of representing these 6,000-year seasonal periods culminating at the 12,000-year half-orbit points, the point where the snake consumes itself in an effort to survive. The Earth is wiped clean as part of the orbit of Sirius A's barycenter is affected on a cyclical basis also by the Pleiades star cluster, also known as the Seven Sisters, which is the nearest star cluster to Earth and situated between 434 and 446 light-years away. Magnetism, and especially electromagnetism, and especially when in the vacuum of space, has powerful effects on all of the other objects in the neighborhood. Our closest approaches with both the Sirius star and its barycenter with the Sun, and our closest approach to the Pleiades star cluster have gravitational effects on us every 24,000 years.
The most suitable candidate for the cause of this would be a star closer to the plane of the solar system, or celestial equator. Sirius A meets this criteria at a declination of -17 degrees. It is also the brightest star in the night sky, 3 times brighter than Alpha Centauri, and twice as bright as the next brightest star, Canopus. Sirius is the 5th closest system of stars to our own.
The vast majority of observable stars are binary or multiple star systems. In these systems, 2 or more stars share a common focus of revolution and are gravitationally bound to each other in defined orbits. This is such a common observation such that the gravitational interaction of multiple stars appears to be the normal mode of stellar system formation. It is generally presumed that the Sun is a unique exception to this commonly observed phenomenon. However, observational evidence suggests that the Sun is moving in a defined orbit around a companion system of stars. Some may believe that the precession of the equinoxes is caused by the slow and steady wobble of the Earth's poles caused by gravitational forces from the Moon, Sun, and partially Jupiter. The odds of this occurring naturally because of gravity are astronomical, to say the least. The alternative is that we are in a binary orbit with Sirius, which takes 24,000 years to complete. The reason for using the 24,000-year figure and not the 26,000-year one, which is currently calculated based on the movement of the stars, is because as the 2 stars approach each other, the closer they get, the faster they will travel and the rate of precession will increase.
Sirius does not precess with the other stars. Instead, it moves in the exact opposite direction to balance perfectly with Earth's precession cycle and looks as though it is standing still relative to the other stars. Which is why the Egyptian pyramids being built to reflect the location of Sirius A on July 4th of any year was so important to them. The Sun and Sirius system model satisfies the observational behavior of Sirius and the constellations of the zodiac as they regress throughout the great cycle of 26,000 years.
The reason why the Egyptians and many other civilizations of that era used Sirius as their marker for the passage of time is because they picked the most stable object as their reference point. We choose the Sun as our reference point, and this is obviously highly inaccurate. Every 4 years, a day has to be added to keep accurate time. But even Sirius was not accurate enough for the keepers of time. The Mayans? With their remarkably advanced astronomy, they quickly detected the inaccuracies in using Sirius as a marker for the passage of time, and switched to an even more accurate cycle involving the Pleiades. There is, however, an even more stable reference point than the Pleiades, and that is the galactic center, which from the perspective of our galaxy is the ultimate center of rotation.
And indeed, the Mayans chose the galactic center as a reference point to mark the passage of time, which is evident as the Mayan long count ends with the galactic alignment of the solar system on December 21, 2012. Therefore, the idea that the Earth orbits the Sun, or that the Sun orbits Sirius, or that Sirius orbits Alcyone, and that Alcyone orbits the galactic nucleus, is not revolutionary, it's just a rediscovery of lost knowledge.
It explains why we now face one of the harder times on planet Earth as we proceed towards this galactic realignment. Our Earth isn't a round ball, and it, like every other object in the solar system, has a polarity. A polarity that is changing as it always has in a magnetic, logarithmic manner, following Newton's laws and the laws of electromagnetism. The Earth will soon flip on its axis, and this flip will be rapid as described by the Janabekov effect. This principle affects rotating objects in a gravitational field, objects that aren't entirely perfect spheres. In effect, much like the center of a bowling ball is designed to not be a perfect sphere, to impart a spinning force which sometimes gyroscopically reverses course on its way to the pins.
It is difficult to imagine a planet where its core becomes unlocked from the crust and magically somehow flips over, leaving the mantle to spin freely. It is difficult to imagine any object with such perfect spherical properties that a core flip could occur while keeping the original polarity. The principles of Occam's razor dictate, instead, that the entire planet itself rotates, flips, and lands on new geomagnetic directions every 6,000 years. Occam's razor dictates that the Egyptians knew this, and they knew every 12,000 years we'd face an extinction event that we had a right to both be aware of and prepare for.
We are children of the sun. We are children of this earth. We are on a cycle that repeats every 24,000 years, with events at the 12,000-year mark being determined to be the most violent through review of the fossil record and geomagnetic record. We're almost at that point again.
We've been lied to in an effort to keep us from understanding these events, while the rich and famous hurriedly build bunkers and otherwise prepare for life underground. I believe, like the Egyptians believed, that we have a right as humans to address our destiny, know of it beforehand, and take similar steps to prepare for the conclusion of the warm period in this cycle.
We were meant to learn from the ancients. We were meant to learn from the passing of Kiely and Trinity Bacchus and Dante de la Torre. We were meant to find a better way to survive than to breed 19 children, consuming the males and being forced to explain to our surviving children why their brothers were being consumed. Like a snake eating its own tail. We are meant to pay it forward to the next generations and shield our children from such horrors, and teach that next generation how to survive without using the Egyptian methods.
We aren't cannibals anymore, and no one said taking out a 6,000-year-old death cult. And we now have a clearer destiny, thanks to the Egyptians. The pyramids are there to remind us there's no escape from gravity or where we've come from and where we are going, in an infinite circle of life from birth through death and rebirth again.
Please like, share, subscribe, and help spread this wisdom from the ancients. Thank you for watching.